Who do you have no sympathy for? Story 1. It is difficult to explain, but some people seem to choose to be ignorant, even though they could easily prevent it. Story 2. People who only empathize with the situation when it happens to them, like it doesn't matter if it happens to strangers, but when it comes home, then they care. Answer. Seems like a lot of people in this comment section. Like I've seen comments saying they have no sympathy for substances addicts, the homeless, poor people who inflict it on themselves, people who choose to stay in abusive relationships, etc. And I can't help but wonder if their tune would change if they found themselves or a loved one in one of these situations. Story 3. People who weaponize kindness to keep being cruel. You know the type always doing their best while sucking the air out of every room. Story 4. People who act like they're the only one who ever went through anything in life. People who think that they can be rude because of their childhood trauma. Answer. I see you've met one of my former pet-sitting clients. When her husband died, no one else in the world had ever experienced such grief, and no one ever would. She flat out told me I couldn't understand her pain because no one in my life had ever died. I'd already lost every one of my grandparents, both biological and step. Her dog, who lived with me for the last years of his life, passed away, and one of my cats died a month later. She flat out told me her grief was greater than mine, despite the fact that I was mourning both her dog and my cat. Then she told me not to contact her anymore. Fine by me. People like this are insufferable. Story 5. People who treat others like garbage and then play victim when no one wants to deal with them. Babe, this isn't karma. It's just everyone finally seeing you clearly. Answer. A cunt. I'm being nice, calling her that. I went to school with, always went out of her way to treat me like shoot. When I first met her, she was one of the new kids at school. I wanted to be nice and make her feel welcome. She claimed she was going to invite me to a party at her place. One day, she starts handing out invitations to everyone around me. I was the only one who never got an invitation, despite her telling me she would invite me. I was upset that she lied to me. She turns into a full-on diva and starts yelling at me even though I never once raised my voice at her. She, unfortunately, showed up to a different party I actually got invited to. She told me, "The only reason you're here is because we were forced to invite you." Fast forward to about 3 years later during my lunch break, I was hanging out alone in an isolated but easily accessible area that I've seen many other people hang out before. She tracked me down to tell me with her snotty attitude, "You're not supposed to be here," despite no adult ever saying that area was off limits. A year later, I got Instagram. I found the meanie's Instagram and blocked her as fast as I could. I unknowingly became friends with one of her friends that year. This friend asked me to unblock the cunt. Of course, I refused to do so. The friend gave her phone to the cunt so she could harass me through text by saying, "Why are you so butthurt about something that happened 4 fudge years ago? If you're gonna talk shoot about me, say it to my fudge face." My first thought was, you've treated me like shoot for years and you wonder why you're blocked. I completely lost all respect for that friend for putting me in that situation. Years after graduation, I found her mugshot after she got a DUI. I haven't felt so excited in a long time. Not the fact that she risked people's lives, but the fact that one of my childhood bullies got arrested. The biggest downside was that she already bailed out of jail by the time I found out she got arrested. Story 6. Child-free woman here by choice. Child-free people who date, marry people with kids, thinking the kids will somehow have no impact on their life or relationship, and then complain when the kids' needs take priority. And by extension, the parent who promises the CF person that they'll have little to no interaction with the kid in the first place just to get their leg over. Zero sympathy for either of them. The kid comes first, and if you don't like it, then don't have them, or don't start a relationship with a parent. Answer: God, thank you. I loo the when they pull the "but you can't help who you love" crap. Mom had a boyfriend when I was in the 6th grade, and this was him to a T. He spent the entire time complaining that she was spending all her time with us instead of him. What about him? Mind you, our dad got primary custody, so Mom was a every other weekend thing, maybe a month in the summer aka. This guy, bare minimum, spent 5 days a week with Mom, all by themselves, and that wasn't enough. He'd throw genuine tantrums if we did anything kid-like together, or got anything. Like if we went to an arcade or something, Mom buys us some sort of treat, or some Yu-Gi-Oh cards. Freak out and whining. Why do we have to kid stuff? You spend all weekend with the kids. We're a couple. Am I supposed to not exist? Why can't we go to a bar? The kids can deal without seeing you for once. Again, every other weekend is all we saw her. Middle-aged man. Everyone I honestly think him being the first boyfriend after the divorce, albeit a few years later, is why she stayed. At least until he started making sexist and slightly creepy comments towards me, at which point she not only dropped him but had. Dad put the fear of God into him for that. But man, as a kid, I thought he was just a grumpy buzzkill. As an adult, I see him for the pathetic man-child he was. Story 7. People who hurt animals, seniors or children, or anyone weaker than the just because they think they are stronger or have any power. Power my jerk be. Story 8. People who are mean, rude people for no reason. You would think people would grow out of it, but I've learnt as an adult they do not. Bullies are of all ages. Story 9. Unqualified teachers, religious scammers, bullies who make fun of others for their disabilities and physical appearance. Story 10. People who choose not to be on birth control and then want everyone to help them with their surprise accident. There is absolutely nothing surprising about fudge raw and then getting pregnant. That was your choice. Now deal with it on your own. Story 11. People who vote against their own best interests because they would rather hurt others than improve their own life. Story 12. People who complain about how tired, broke, etc. they are because they have kids, then have more kids and ask for handouts and sympathy. Answer. It seems like every other day there is another post in a pregnant about someone getting pregnant by accident soon after having their first kid. I get that birth control can fail, but I can't help shaking my head in frustration at the ones who seemingly did nothing to prevent it and just hoped it wouldn't happen to them. Their mistake is now going to be their kid's problem. Story 13. People who have 6 kids and then complain they can't find a house to rent because it's too expensive. If you had less children, you'd have more money and you wouldn't need a big house. You literally put yourself in that position with your choices. Own it. Story 14. Those people in the comments of videos from the ongoing war in Ukraine, where some 19-yo boy gets blown to shreds by a drone, and these idiots are cheering on the takedown because the kid was fighting on the wrong side. Do these people realize that if the wrong politician makes the wrong decision at the wrong time, that could be them in just a few years, or even their sons, brothers, fathers, or uncles? No able-bodied man on Earth should be excited by the deaths in this war, unless they would willingly volunteer to fight it, in which case both nations are open to foreign volunteers. So go. Ahead, Billy Badass. Try it out. War is sweet to those who have never tasted it. Story 15. People whining about their finances when they're simply living above their means. I understand most things should be more affordable than they are. I'm not talking about someone buying the more expensive chips over the store brand. I'm talking about people crying over their bills or debt when they drive the most expensive cars, wear all designer, carry the newest phones, etc. I work in auto insurance and see it regularly. Someone buys a super expensive luxury vehicle, and then when they add it to their policy, they realize they can't afford the monthly bill and they lose their mind. I have friends who do the same. They ask me to help them with their budget because they don't know how they'll afford rent. We look at their expenses and they're spending thousands shopping, partying, drinking, etc. They make great pay but splurge on things they don't need. Those same people will cry that it's the economy, greedy landlords, poor pay, etc., keeping them down, but it's not. They're keeping themselves down. Answer: I once read about a nuclear family who said that even after their income of $10,000 a month, they could barely afford to scrape by. Yes, you read that right. I went to their Facebook and saw they lived in a massive house in a gated community, had 5 cars, 1 kid in expensive daycare, and the other attending the most expensive private school in the city. Regular road trips all over the state and to Disneyland, their out-of-control parade of credit cards. And here the lot of us are, trying to make ends meet every day on a shoestring budget. Story 16. Obligatory pedophiles, rapists, animal abusers. But on the personal side, I have a friend who is feeling very sorry for herself after she cheated repeatedly on her husband and keeps doing it despite complaining so much about how it's affecting her mental health. She keeps complaining about how terrible she feels, how she's not the person she thought she was, how it's causing mental health issues like dissociating while driving. Her husband is a piece of shoot, but cheating isn't the answer. I have nothing kind to say to her right now. She did this to herself. Not only to herself, but to her husband. Story 17. My cousin, who loves Trump and also is big mad that her medically fragile child has recently been kicked off Medicaid. Story 18. Doctors that won't perform a hysterectomy because a woman's too young or has no kids, even though the woman is suffering due to medical conditions and needs one to get better men making laws on women's body, resulting in their life being in danger. Story 19. I live in southern Kentucky, and I cannot tell you how many times we get animal abuse. The one 3 weeks ago was absolutely disgusting. Thank God the kitty cat is going to be okay. He bit its ears off. Yes, you heard me right, and broke its leg, had surgery, and is doing great, and has a new safe home. Story 20. People who prey on the vulnerability and innocence of others, especially children and animals. Oh, and narcissists. Story 21. People who veer from one crisis to another and expect other people to bail them out. If you have a problem with every situation in your life, the problem is you. Story 22. This one might be polarizing, but parents. Tired of parents complaining all the time. I'm at the age where a lot of my friends have young kids. All they do is meanie. There is an option to not have them, you know. You knew what you were getting yourself into. Story 23. All the fudge grifters in the world calling themselves reverend or pastor or preacher, priest, deacon. I used to be one. Bishop, cardinal, pope. Fudge them all. Story 24. The oh, woe is me people. The ones who constantly complain about their life hardships but never really do anything to improve them. They just enjoy the sympathy of others. Story 25. People who are not the specific gender, age, intimacy, orientation, etc. of a person who they are grilling about "Why do you all?" and then proceeds to interrupt them and argue with them as being wrong when the question person tries to explain. Bonus: when they then play victim afterwards because the question person calls them on it and isn't apologetic or submissive. Story 26. When my supervisor got fired for breaking multiple stuff on accident and she cried her way out. She was a terrible human being to me for being Hispanic racist and made sure she and 2 PPL got more hours at work than all of the group. Story 27. Bullies and anyone else who willfully inflicts hurt abuse on others, especially on those who can't defend themselves, children, animals, the elderly, etc. Story 28. Managers who eliminate their reports' enthusiasm and motivation. Corporate politicians who act that they own the company. Story 29. Pedophiles can go straight in the wood chipper for all I care. Also, people who abuse substances and try to blame others. There are many roads you can take in life. Don't blame others for taking the one you traveled. I'm sure I'll get heat for that comment, but that's just how I feel. Story 30. People who don't like animals. I was at the train station yesterday, and a pigeon was eating a biscuit or something and accidentally dropped it close to a girl. He tried to go get it, and the woman tried to kick it with her feet. Then, the same thing happened with a man next to her. If I could have body slammed them to the ground, I would have. Story 31. Intimacy offenders, animal abusers, and anyone who voted for Donald Trump in this election. Sorry, not sorry. Story 32. Tankies, conservatives, libertarians, billionaires, and probably most government officials, elected or not. Story 33. Anyone who abuses children in any sort of way. Also animals. Pathetic, disgusting, despicable, rot in hell. Story 34. People who do risky things for fun, like mountain climbing, skiing, etc., and then expect sympathy when they have an accident. Billionaires. Story 35. Trump supporters facing the consequences of their vote and people who didn't vote because the alternative to the deranged cult leader wasn't perfect dealing the consequences of their non-vote. Fudge them all. Story 36. Anyone who voted for Trump and now has the SADS because their business had to shut down due to tariffs, or their friends and family are being deported, or they're being left to die in a parking lot rather than be given an abortion. Story 37. Anyone who plans to spend eternity singing joyfully to their God while billions of their fellow humans, perhaps even their own friends and loved ones, burn in literal fire with no possibility of ever escaping, unable even to die forever, especially if they try to tell me they know something about love, or they claim that their God knows more than I do about right and wrong. Story 38. Anyone DEI that votes Republican. I can't tell you how many Hispanics, women, and black people I know who voted for Trump. What are you doing? Story 39. Honestly, I find it quite hard to have zero sympathy for someone. For example, my mother was a piece of shoot Karen who bossed everyone around and expected everyone to do exactly as she said when she said, and would throw a tantrum every time she didn't get what she wanted. She's permanently harmed a few people, including me. I don't want to have sympathy for people like her, but at the same time, I can't help but want to help her. I don't want her to be like that, and am sure she would do some of those things herself if she was physically able. Her health declined really bad. That being said, the police in my hometown. I can't exactly speak for the entire world, but where I grew up, the police were corrupt AF. Glad I don't live anywhere near there anymore. Story 40. No sympathy is harsh, but I find it hard to sympathize with people who consistently deny their wrongdoings or mistakes. Story 41. People who abuse animals, bullies. People who see politics as a sports team, either red or blue, and not realize that no government official actually give a crap about you or what you believe, and love that there is so much division. Story 42. Pedos, rapists, people who fudge around and find out only to play the victim after. Bullies, influencers, and people who stick their nose in other people's business when it's none of theirs. So pretty much a huge percentage of humans. Story 43. The parents in my generation complain about bullying in schools. I was there in school with you all. You were the bullies. Story 44. Animal abusers. I'm a very religious person who doesn't believe in the passing penalty. But animal abusers seriously make me question my loyalty. Story 45. People who are fully aware of their extremely bad character flaws, but act as if being self-aware is all the work they have to do to better themselves. Like, no. You telling me that you're aware you're an enormous jerk doesn't suddenly make you less of an enormous jerk. Story 46. The people who refuse to be human because of their religion. X. Every other word out of their mouth is God, Jesus, pray, or faith. X. They make every conversation about faith try to convert everyone to their religion and lecture other people for being Muslim or Sikh or Jewish or whatever religion. X. Refuses to cuss or watch movies rated over PG-13. Also refuse to watch horror movies. X. Refuse to let their daughters do specific things, disown their kids for not following traditional values. X. Not a Christian example. People who beat up and dare their kids for not wearing hijabs. X. Acting as if it's the end of the world when their adult kids have premarital intimacy. X. Forcing their kids to read their Bible, memorize Bible scriptures as a punishment. X. Forcing the women to serve the men first, then allow themselves to eat afterwards. X. Tells everyone that they are going to hell because of something that they don't like. Story 47. People who get eliminate in amusement parks when they go in restricted areas. Sorry, not sorry, you lost your freaking head walking under the roller coaster, moron. Story 48. Sick people who do nothing to make it better. My mom is back in the hospital with a UTI, hepatic encephalopathy, and pancreatitis. She won't stop drinking and is not taking her meds. So while she's crying about how much pain she's in, I feel next to nothing. Only anger, really. Story 49. I really dislike to say this, and I'm sorry, but the president currently in the US, he just grinds my gears. He reminds me of freaking Senator Armstrong from Metal Gear Rising. Sorry to make the reference. There will be a few people on this community that will definitely know who the hell I'm talking about. LOL edit typos. Story 50. A man who was unemployed and disabled slept on my couch for over a year. One night, my best friend entered my condo and began a drunken tirade about how this guy is a leech on my jerk and doesn't deserve the kindness I've afforded him. His reaction to the tirade? To pick up the first empty beer bottle he could find and smash it over my best friend's head, leaving a big bloody gash. The next morning, I confronted him about the situation and he painted himself the hero. His smug half-smile grated on my emotions, and I kicked him the fudge out that very same day. Years later, I still see his struggles on Facebook about shoot roommates, and it makes me giggle. Fudge you, Brent. You had colitis and your colon was removed. You ended up finding a job at a liquor store. You're just a leech. Fudge you. Story 51. Animal abusers. Yes, some people are uneducated, and this doesn't really apply to like small children. Their parents should step in. There are so many forms of animal abuse people excuse, and people will just refuse to learn. It makes me so fudge angry. It's just evil. I have 2 rescues bunnies from a hoarder household. They used to be super scared, and now they're super adventurous. The cutest things ever, and incredibly sweet. I also have a 911 memorial rescue dove who had a ton of lice and worms. She's now mated with a racing pigeon who stumbled into my backyard, who has very dehydrated and malnourished. And by the way, when they fail a race and you bring them back, they are eliminate. It is truly despicable, and there is no excuse. When you abuse living creatures who depend on you, or just straight-up random animals, you are an evil, disgusting piece of shit. People who are cruel to animals while being cruel to people. Story 52. Parents who kick their kids out of their homes or stop talking to them because of their sexuality or gender. Story 53. Parents who abuse their kids or let their kids be abused by others. Stupid people who use their stupidity to excuse their bigotry. I mean, how much time you got, LOL? The list could easily be longer. Story 54. People who are financially struggling and or poor and still go and have more children. Like WTF. You can't take care of yourself. How can you take care of children? Story 55. Older men with no patience or emotional maturity. There are moments in life you have to wait, and if it is that distressing, you must learn to handle your emotions instead of lashing out like an irate piss baby. Story 56. Elderly Americans who voted for Trump, who now have to figure out how to pay for their health coverage as Medicare gets gutted. Idiots. Thanks a lot. Story 57. Conservatives. We don't want to be friends with you anymore. We don't want to date you. We don't want to unite with you. You've made your choices, and they were terrible. Now you have to live with them. Story 58. I'm struggling to find sympathy for people who voted for someone who is now actively hurting their health and quality of life. Story 59. Hypocrites. Especially those who cloak themselves in religious piety and then do little to raise those most in need. Story 60. White Christian nationalists who are just simping against the trans community, the gay community, and honestly, anyone who isn't a white Christian nationalist. Story 61. Adults who pass on their trauma instead of handling it. No, I do not care that your 75-year-old father had a rough childhood, and that's why he is maladapted and raising a spoiled, insolent grandchild and is cruel to his wife. Handle it. Grow the F up. Story 62. People who constantly complain abity boyfriends or situationship A to you, but never take your advice like, I don't want to hear about it anymore. If we're not going to listen, lol. Story 63. People who cause their own problems and refuse to change anything about themselves or environment to fix them. Story 64. People on both sides of the political spectrum who mass post and complain about the other side get proven wrong, then proceed to not acknowledge that they were just wrong. Also, same subject people who don't do anything to contribute to fixing the issues they are upset about. A lot of opinion, but lack of action. I try my best to not complain about something.